Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something really significant, family law. Specifically, we're looking at divorce and child custody.
Yeah, it's a topic that touches so many lives, often during, well, really challenging times.
Exactly. And our mission today is to unpack the complexities using insights from the source material you provided, perspectives from the attorneys at the law offices of Haskell and Dyer.
Right. They practice in southern Maryland counties like Anne Arundel, Calvert, Charles, St. Mary's, Prince George's.
So the goal is to cut through some of the legal jargon, make sense of the information, and hopefully help you feel more informed about these sensitive areas.
Think of it as extracting the key knowledge nuggets. We want to understand why the source highlights certain aspects and what that really means for someone going through it.
Let's dive in then. The source material introduces the law offices of Haskell and Dyer, and it's clear their main focus is divorce and child custody. But what jumped out at me was their commitment. They talk about understanding not just the legal steps, but the emotional side of things too.
That's a really important distinction, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're framing it as more than just legal procedure. It's a personal journey.
Yeah, it suggests a more holistic approach maybe, acknowledging the human element.
Which is, frankly, essential in family law. It's rarely just about the law itself.
Okay, so let's break down their focus areas. First up, divorce law. The source presents this as guiding you through that personal journey we mentioned.
And the services listed kind of map out that path. They mention legal separation and divorce filings. That's everything from starting the process right through to the final decree.
Getting it all officially handled. Then there's property and asset division. The source says the goal is fair and equitable distribution.
Right. And equitable doesn't always mean a simple 50-50 split, does it? It's about fairness based on the circumstances.
No, definitely not. It involves valuing assets, homes, cars, investments, pensions, even debts, and figuring out a fair division. That sounds complicated.
It can be one of the trickiest parts, for sure. Lots of details. They also list spousal support or alimony. The focus there seems to be on fairness and stability after the divorce.
Makes sense. And they stress personalized legal strategy, so no cookie-cutter approaches. Every case is unique.
Exactly. That seems crucial, tailoring the strategy to the specific situation.
So the takeaway here seems to be if you're facing divorce, these are the key stages where the source suggests legal guidance is really vital for protecting your interests.
Yeah, navigating filing, finances, it's a lot. Okay, so let's shift to child custody law.
Here, the source is, well, very clear. The absolute priority, the children's well-being.
That's the guiding principle, isn't it? Everything flows from that.
Absolutely. And the services listed reflect that. Custody and visitation rights aiming for arrangements that are genuinely best for the kids.
And they acknowledge life changes, too, mentioning modification of custody orders.
Yeah.
Because circumstances do change.
Right. Jobs change, people move, which leads to another service, parental relocation, navigating the rules around moving with a child.
That can be complex. They also mention guardianship issues.
So focusing on that child's well-being idea, how does the source say courts actually figure that out? What does best interests mean in practice?
Well, the source indicates it's not just one thing. Courts look at a whole range of factors. The child's age, their physical and emotional health,
Okay.
the ability of each parent to care for the child, their history of doing so, and, importantly, any history of family violence or substance abuse. It's a comprehensive look.
So it's really about assessing the whole picture to find the most stable, supportive environment for that specific child.
Precisely. It's not just about what the parents want.
The source also mentions common custody setups in Maryland, joint custody where parents share responsibility,
Right, sharing legal decision-making and often physical time.
and sole custody where one parent has the primary authority. But the key seems to be that parenting plans are customized.
Yeah, even within those labels, the actual day-to-day schedule and responsibilities are tailored. No two plans look exactly alike.
And this ties directly back to how divorce affects custody, right? The courts are constantly assessing parental roles, living situations, stability, all through that best interests lens.
It's central whenever children are involved. Definitely not an afterthought.
Okay, let's pivot slightly. When does the source actually suggest you might need to pick up the phone and call a family law attorney? They give a list of common scenarios.
Yeah, this is helpful. It basically outlines those moments where things get legally complex or the stakes are really high. First one, obviously, filing for divorce.
Protecting your rights from the get-go makes sense.
Then child custody disputes. These can get complicated fast, and advocating effectively for the child's best interests is key.
Child support issues are also on there, whether you're trying to establish it, need it changed.
Or enforcing it, yeah.
Mm.
Adoption processes, too. Those involve navigating pretty intricate procedures.
Guardianship cases are mentioned for kids or incapacitated adults, and significantly, domestic violence situations.
Absolutely. Getting protective orders, dealing with how that impacts divorce or custody, crucial area.
It's not all reactive either. They mention drafting prenuptial agreements, planning before marriage to protect assets.
Good point. And back in the divorce context, dealing with spousal support or alimony, whether seeking or contesting it.
Division of assets and debts, again, needing help to ensure that equitable split we talked about.
And finally, paternity issues, establishing or challenging legal parentage.
So if you're listening, this list isn't just legal jargon. It's like a roadmap of situations where the source strongly suggests getting legal advice is pretty essential.
Yeah, it flags the trigger points. The source also has some practical tips in its FAQs section, like preparing for that first consultation with a lawyer.
Right. They say gather your documents, marriage certificate, financial stuff, any prior orders or agreements like prenups.
And make a list of questions.
Exactly. Why? Because it lets the attorney give you more specific advice right from the start rather than just speaking in generalities.
Makes total sense. They also touch on mediation in custody cases. The source frames it as really valuable for helping parents communicate and reach their own agreements.
Which usually means less conflict, right? And maybe agreements that stick better because the parents created them.
Potentially, yes. And they clarify about changing custody orders. It is possible if there are significant life changes.
But it's not automatic?
No, it requires court approval. The court still has to be convinced the change is in the child's best interest.
Okay. What about the divorce process itself? Any insights there?
The source gives a kind of standard overview: prepare and file the petition, serve the other spouse, they file a response.
The negotiation, maybe mediation, potentially court hearings if you can't agree.
Right, leading to the final judgment. They also list factors for calculating child support in Maryland.
Things like parental income.
Yep, income of both parents, number of kids, healthcare costs, education expenses, the custody arrangement itself. It all feeds into the calculation, usually based on state guidelines.
And protecting your rights during the divorce. What's the advice there?
Get knowledgeable legal help that's stressed. Document everything meticulously. Understand your specific rights. And negotiate fairly. An experienced attorney is highlighted as key.
It really circles back to that idea of getting help early, especially for complex issues like divorce or custody disputes.
Definitely. Early guidance can make a big difference. They also mention custody evaluations.
What's the purpose of those?
It's basically an in-depth assessment, usually ordered by the court, to help the judge understand the family dynamics better and determine what's truly in the child's best interests. It provides neutral insight.
Interesting. And a specific Maryland point, can grandparents seek custody?
The source says yes, it's possible under certain circumstances, like if it's clearly in the child's best interest or maybe if the parents are found to be unfit.
Got it. What about enforcing custody rights if the other parent isn't following the order?
Know your rights under the order, document any violations carefully, and then seek legal action promptly. Don't let it slide.
Makes sense. They also briefly cover uncontested divorce, the simpler path.
Yeah, if you and your spouse agree on everything, custody, support, property, you complete the forms together, file them, maybe attend a brief hearing. Much smoother, obviously.
What about the impact of domestic violence on custody decisions?
The source is clear. Child safety is paramount. Courts will prioritize protecting the child, which often means favoring the non-abusive parent in custody arrangements.
As they should. And finally, any tips from the source on just handling conflict with an ex-spouse during all this?
Yeah, some practical advice. Try to stay calm, communicate openly, but focus on the issues, especially the kids. Set boundaries, and consider mediation or legal help if you're just stuck in conflict.
All sounds easier said than done sometimes, but good advice nonetheless.
For sure. And just a note, while our focus today, based on the source, was really deep on family law.
Divorce and custody.
Right. The source material does briefly mention other areas they handle, like criminal defense, civil litigation, just for context on the firm itself.
Good point. Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive into the source material?
I think the biggest one is that family law, especially divorce and custody, is intensely personal. It's not just legal filings. It's wrapped up in major life changes and emotions.
Yeah, and understanding the legal steps is crucial, knowing about asset division, support calculations, the best interest standard for kids.
And knowing when you might need help. Recognizing those trigger points we discussed, complex disputes, financial disagreements, safety concerns, preparation seems key too.
Preparation, clear communication, even when it's tough, and always keeping the focus on the core issues, especially the children's well-being. These themes really came through.
Absolutely. It highlights the need for informed guidance to navigate these choppy waters.
Which brings us to a final thought, kind of building on that idea from the source itself. They call navigating divorce a personal journey. So what does it really mean for a legal process, which can feel so formal and procedural, to be inherently personal? And how might acknowledging that shape how you'd approach it or the kind of support you'd seek if you ever found yourself in that situation?
That's a really interesting question to ponder. How the personal and the procedural intersect.
Something to think about. That's all the time we have for this deep dive, exploring family law through the lens of the insights provided by the law offices of Haskell and Dyer. We hope this has been informative.